On today's show, ESPN's Tim MacMahon joins us to talk about Anthony Davis. The Mavs cannot focus on winning the trade with Anthony Davis. They just have to figure out how to move on from him. Today's Locked On Mavs.
This is Flagg, and you're listening to Locked On Mavs.
Nick, that's a good question.
Good morning, Isaac. All these changes, I still got my dog Dwight Powell.
Locked On Mavs, your daily Dallas Mavericks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Still can't leave.
Your team every day.
I'm going to get a city like that.
And welcome. You're Locked On to the Dallas Mavericks, your team every day. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member covering the Mavs for over 10 years. Thanks for being in every day or making Locked On Mavs your first listen in the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcast network out there. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. We're joined by Tim MacMahon. We talk a lot about Anthony Davis situation. We talk a lot about who's the most likely to be traded between Gafford and Naji. We talk about those things a little bit in those situations. We also talk about the Mavs GM situation and who the Mavs are picking for their next GM. If Jason Kidd's name gets in there. So we talk a lot about that. And so let's get into it, our conversation with ESPN's Tim MacMahon. All right, welcome in Tim MacMahon from ESPN. Howdy, partners. Everywhere you can find him. You can find him being chanted about by mobs of Dallas Mavericks fans, many other places. Isaac, we've got a lot of questions for Tim today.
Oh, I love when Tim hops on. Tim, when's the next Howdy Partners coming out? Next week?
That's the first one.
Well, howdy, partners. As regular listeners of the show, watchers of the show, I guess it's on YouTube. It's a Thursday weekly staple. Although with Thursday being a trade deadline, we might have to bump it to Friday. It'll be, I think the Mavericks will be active at the trade deadline. Whether they will do anything that is considered major is very much TBD.
Okay, before I want to go through the AD timeline in just a second, but let's just start right off the top. Most likely Mav to be traded.
I mean, this is basically, hey, would you like to get aggregated right off the bat?
Would you like to?
Cooper Flagg. I'm just kidding.
Hey,
right, let's end it now.
I'm just kidding. I think most likely probably Daniel Gafford. Here's the thing. I think the Mavericks do something to shed salary. I think they do something they're the fourth highest payroll in the league, and they're going to be a lottery team. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And that sort of move, obviously, if you're trading Anthony Davis, you hope it's a financially advantageous move. If it's not, you don't trade him. That doesn't make much sense. But I think Gafford is the most likely to go in that sort of a deal.
How much is that threat of that second apron next year motivating them in any kind of these moves? Because it does feel like if they trade somebody just to clear salary, like that will not make people happy, but that is such a big threat for next year.
Well, look, man, here's the thing. Everything that the Mavericks do has to be viewed through the prism of what puts us in the best position to build a sustainable contender around Cooper Flagg. And being in the second apron in his second year and, being in a position where you're paying repeater tax, just from a team building perspective with the restrictions that come along with that makes zero sense. So I don't, look, the ownership, they don't want to pay a ton of luxury tax for a losing team. That doesn't make sense either. But again, just from a team building perspective, like you can't have the fourth highest payroll and be headed to the lottery.
Okay, so with Anthony Davis, if we go down through this timeline, because I just want you to kind of give me what is going on. There, a few weeks ago or a month ago, they're shopping in with teams. Rich Paul wants the extension or wants him in a place to give him an extension. We have the hand injury, and then we have the whole debacle that day of like, he's out for the year. AD's like, lies online. And then, now he's not out for the year. Then we have the Mavs saying he's going to be healed in 6 weeks, not reevaluated. Shams is, reporting that teams are still interested. Then we get a video the other day of AD's before the game doing the workouts and stuff with a hand in the brace, and he's not going to have surgery. He's going to be healed. What's going on with the AD situation?
I mean, AD's preparing to return toward the end of February or early March. And we will see, obviously, the trade deadline's Thursday. We'll see if he's still on the Mavericks roster at that point. If he is still on the Mavericks roster at that point, I think there's discussions to be had about whether it makes sense for him to return this season, considering the standings. Obviously there's going to be discussions at some point about Kyrie. Those are still a while down the road. The first thing is get him back in practice. There's a whole process there. But with AD, I think it might come down to, at the deadline, the Mavericks making a decision based on, hey, is it worth it to move on and shed the salary and shed the contract, moving forward, and in a trade that you don't quote unquote win? Is it worth it to create the flexibility, even if you're not getting the kind of assets that you want in return? Or would you rather move forward with AD on the roster at least into the summer, when, ideally, and I would hope, whoever's going to be making basketball decisions is going to be in place at that point. If you're asking me to guess, I still think it is less than 50-50 that he gets traded. In other words, if I'm putting down $1, I'd put it on AD doesn't get moved by the deadline, but I wouldn't put down a mortgage payment. I'll put it to you that way. I'm not like real confident either way. But this is a deal where, listen, man, Patrick Dumont can't have the priority of, we've got to win this trade if he wants to actually make a trade before the deadline. Like, you're not going to, quote unquote, win a trade, and you have to be able to separate the debacle that got Nico Harrison fired. And look, Patrick Dumont signed off on that, so ultimately he's responsible. But the Luka deal's done. There's no redos, there's no mulligans, and really there's no making up for it with an Anthony Davis deal. The way you make up for it, so to speak, is by taking advantage of the gift of a second chance you got with a miraculous lottery win. And dude, build around Cooper Flagg. That has to be the priority moving forward. And look, if they make an AD trade at the deadline, what are you guys going to do? What graphic are you putting together? Right?
Hallelujah.
The aggregation, the Luka trade netted this, right? Like,
exactly. And that's going to be on SportsCenter and NBA Today and everywhere else that covers the league, right? But you can't worry about that graphic.
Yeah.
You got to worry about, hey, you've got a 19-year-old kid who just turned 19 and is awesome. Scored 49 points last night. Fills out the box score. Is like the epitome of the kind of dude that you want to build around. You got to do what's best to build around Cooper Flagg.
One of the pieces of pushback we get a lot from listeners is we say, well, if Anthony Davis wants this extension, the Mavericks don't want to give it to him. And then we say, well, now Rich Paul and his agency can make it really tough, make it really uncomfortable for Anthony Davis. What are ways that they do that, or how is the influence of an agency like that? How does that affect a team? Because it does kind of seem like that, like those run the world in a way.
Yeah, and look, you have to have positive working relationships with a ton of agents around the league. And, I don't think, like, Rich Paul's a professional. He's not a guy who's going to hold a grudge because he's got a lot of clients, and there's only 30 teams that he can work with too. And, kind of the same thing from the Mavericks perspective of, like, hey, there are, however many, like, quote unquote power agents in the league, but these are guys that you're going to have to work with repeatedly. So, I mean, it could get uncomfortable. It's a very unique situation in the sense of, my understanding is Rich Paul's assessed this situation and is kind of getting, we just want to hold off and, we'll see this summer. And he's basically saying, I don't want to play the wait and see game. You're either willing to give Anthony Davis an extension or you're not. There's not, like, maybe is a no in his mind. But AD, my understanding is he doesn't want to get traded midseason. Like, just from a human perspective, it's hard on these guys, especially family guys, right? Who the kids are in school. The wife is just his wife has just completely like moved her life from LA to Dallas and all those kind of things. So I know what I've reported has been perceived as Anthony Davis and Rich Paul aren't on the same page. And I don't think that's fair. That's not fair to put it that way. But, Rich Paul is assessing this purely from a business perspective. And I think he accurately believes it is in AD's best business interest to be traded. But I think among the reasons the Mavs don't feel a lot of pressure to make an AD deal by the deadline is they're not getting that same sense of urgency in their discussions with Anthony Davis himself, if that makes sense.
Coming up, the Dallas Mavericks don't have a GM. Is that the biggest problem in all of this, that they need a permanent GM? Could Jason Kidd be part of it? I think so. We'll talk about that and more coming up. This episode of Locked On Mavs brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowds, everything going on at once, the energy. That game with Cooper Flagg going off for 49 was absolutely incredible. And going to a game has always been something that fans want to do. But getting there is the part that's not so simple. That's where Game Time comes in. It's the go-to app to help with tickets without the hassle. It puts the advantage back where it belongs with the fans. You can go pull up the Game Time app and just in a couple of taps, figure out exactly where you want to sit, or use the zone deals so that you can pick a zone. Like, I want to sit in this section. It'll pick a seat for you that is a really good price. So check that out. You also get the all-in price up front, so you know exactly what you're going to pay. You don't have to worry about fees and stuff like that at checkout. You can also see the view from your seat, which is key. You got to know what you're going to be able to see. If you're going to a hockey game, like how many times your team is going to score on your end of the ice. Take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets and more with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use this code LOCKED ON. It's just LOCKEDON, locked on, for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. And remember, it's gametime.co, not gametime.com. Also brought to you by FanDuel. It's last call for football on FanDuel. There's all kinds of things you can do with Super Bowl 60 happening. NFL season is officially coming to a close, but there's all kinds of props and odds, things that you can do to get in on it and to check it out. Still 4.5 for the Seahawks as the favorite. You can check out all the different kinds of props and things, though. The MVP, Sam Darnold, plus 110. Drake May, plus 230 to win that. They also have all kinds of props. Any player to record up 506 passing yards. 506 is very specific. That's interesting. Either quarterback to record 7+ passing touchdowns, all kinds of stuff like that. Those are the extreme ones. But you can go check it out on FanDuel. Right now, they have a new deal. Bet $5. If you win, you get $200 in bonus bets if you're a new customer. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl season is over. Last call for FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started.
Shut it down! Let's go home!
So when it comes to the injury, if the Mavs planned on or want to keep him and survey the market in the summer, wouldn't it have been a lot easier just to have the surgery and like, hey, just take the rest of the year off? Or was the tea leaves of it makes it feel like, was it a AD agent move of, hey, no, he's going to be healed, he's going to be fine, he's going to be playing,
Still a chance, guys.
Yeah,
I'll be honest with you guys. I don't have like a lot of concrete information on exactly what happened with that whole deal. And I don't want to speculate. I'm just going to sit here and tell you, like, I don't know a whole lot about the medical situation aside from, he's working out right now. The anticipation is he would be cleared to return in late February or early March. I just don't want to get into like medical guessing.
Yeah. Well, let's switch to Naji then. Naji Marshall, when it comes to, fans, we love Naji. It feels like a lot of teams around the league will probably love to have Naji Marshall on their team for a playoff run. If the Mavericks get a decent first-round pick offered to them, or a future unprotected first, do you think it's something they actually consider?
Yeah. I mean, if you can get a first-round pick, I don't know how realistic that is, to be honest with you. And Naji's having a great year. Naji's a unique fit, especially as like a midseason addition. One reason Naji's having such a great year is because he's in a situation with the Mavericks where he can't have the ball in his hands a lot, I mean, essentially, he's been playing point guard for them,
Right.
For the last, whatever it's been, month or so. Like, they don't have a starting point guard in the lineup, but it's not Cooper running point. He's sharing the ball handling responsibilities, but it's not like early in the season when Cooper was the de facto point guard. Really, that's been Naji, and Naji's been so good driving. Like, he's one of the most efficient drivers in the league this season. That floater's unbelievable. But
we're supposed to talk about the floater. We're supposed to keep it underrated. According to him, we're supposed to keep it underrated.
Well, next year, as he's in his contract year, I think he'll want people to talk about it. But like, if you look at adding Naji to a contender, typically the contenders, the guys who are going to have the ball in their hands are established on those teams, and so, I just don't know about. I don't know that there's going to be the kind of interest that would make sense for you to move Naji. I think if you're the Mavs, you have to listen to everybody, to offers on anybody not named Cooper Flagg. You just have to. But I don't know how likely it is that Naji gets moved before the deadline.
They're kind of in a weird situation, obviously, with two co-interim GMs figuring out the future of this franchise in the middle of this season when there's big decisions like an AD trade on the precipice. I'm almost to the point where I'm like, well, if they make no moves, then do they have a plan for the future? Are they just pushing everything into the summer? And it kind of makes me wonder, like, how empowered these guys are to make moves, to move forward with some of these like big decisions.
Well, and really what you have now is Patrick Dumont, who is still an NBA novice, making personnel decisions. Now he's making them based on the input from co-GMs, from Jason Kidd, depending on the day, from Mark Cuban. I mean,
Are Thursdays Mark Cuban's day? Like, it's like,
depending on the day. The way I put it is Cuban's got a seat at the table with an ejector button. And look, obviously Cuban, whatever happened there, he'll tell you he thought he was going to have, if not ultimate control, a lot of say in basketball decisions. He's had minimal. It's gone from none to minimal after the Nico fire. Obviously, last year he had zero. Now he's got minimal, but minimal is more than none. But that's why the most important thing the Mavericks are going to do over the next 6 months isn't the AD trade or lack thereof. It isn't even who they pick in the draft. It's who they hire to run basketball operations, because you better make, like, if you don't make that hire before the draft, I don't know, you have to, right? It's such a critical draft pick. So that hire is going to, obviously be a primary factor in who you actually draft here, which that's such a crucial pick for all the reasons you guys, and I'm sure your audience understands. Just, this is the one draft pick you have under your own control on Cooper Flagg's entire rookie contract. You got to get a guy that you compare with him. And then, again, the AD deal, you're not going to win this trade if it's done before the deadline. You're probably not going to win it if it's done this summer. But if it's not done before the deadline, then, again, whoever you hire to run basketball operations or potentially promote to run basketball operations, they're going to be the one who's ultimately, Patrick Dumont's still making the final decision, but who's ultimately putting those things in place.
At what point is an AD trade a win at this point? Because we've been kind of on the space of like, all right, well, clear money because of the second AD, but get yourself flexibility. If you can get a young player, a draft pick or any kind of draft picks, you get that would be a win. But at this point, it doesn't, at least before the deadline, doesn't seem like they're getting many of those things. What would be a win, do you think? Well,
and that's the threshold that, frankly, Patrick Dumont needs to determine over the next 6 days, right? He needs to determine, and again, I think first things first, you've got to stop looking at it as what is a win. I think you have to look at it as what makes sense for the Mavericks moving forward. Because I'm here to tell you, whatever the Anthony Davis trade return is not going to be something that you're going to throw a parade over, right? Like, you're not going to be people aren't going to be celebrating in the streets. Oh my gosh, do you see what they got in return for Anthony Davis? It's just not the reality given the circumstances. With the contractual situation, the desire for an extension, obviously the durability issues, all those factors. So you're not going to win the trade. Now, I agree with you. There's three things that the ideal AD trade at this point, you're getting financial relief, draft compensation, and some kind of young talent. A flyer on a potential guy who might hit, a young guy who might hit. I'll be impressed if they can get all three of those things. And I think the order that I put them in should be the priorities.
What are the odds that Jason Kidd's the next GM of this team?
What do I look like? DraftKings?
No, we're FanDuel here.
We are a FanDuel podcast.
We'll bleep.
You got an ESPN employee on. So I'm not a bookmaker.
Do you think that is a likelihood? Like, is it a possibility? I'll say that.
It's an interesting concept.
It is, but it's something he's angled for at other stops in the past, and so it's something that I think that people have talked about, and something that, I don't know, seems like, all right, if you're not gonna make a move right now and sign it and hire a GM, you're gonna put Riccardi and Finley both in charge. That would make sense to have those guys as a stopgap before Kidd moves on from the coach. They don't want to change Cooper Flagg's coach in the middle of the year. You move on from the coach, and then the coach becomes the GM. That would make sense for the situation. If
is
not,
MacMahon losing connection right now?
If not,
I'm interested. You guys seem to have a whole plan mapped out here. You guys put some thought in
I have to put a plan, or else it doesn't make any sense. Like you said, for them to not have
every day.
That's an interesting concept. I'm trying to be very careful of getting into speculation here.
That's what we do best over here.
I know, I understand, but I'm trying to be careful not to get into speculation. But I'm just saying it's an interesting concept. Who's your coach then?
You got Frank Vogel sitting there down the row. You got Sean Sweeney who could maybe want an opportunity. He went to another team to take a bigger opportunity. Maybe even if a bigger one opens up back here.
I'll tell you, he didn't go to the Spurs necessarily to take a bigger opportunity. I'll just tell you that right now. That's the way it was presented.
A bigger star player.
I enjoy the fact that you guys believe everything that's put out there in terms of like management explanations, especially over the last 18 months for this franchise.
Listen, I throw this in Isaac's face all the time.
I don't always tell you guys the truth.
And he thinks I use it too much, so I don't.
Okay, this is something you have put in some of your stories before, and this is something I'm curious about Dumont wanting to see the three of those guys on the floor together, of Kyrie, AD, and Cooper. Why fire Nico Harrison if you still want to see his vision on the court?
Dude, come on. You're asking me why they fired Nico Harrison. How could they not?
I'm just saying.
Yeah, wait, actually, him of all people?
Yeah, dude, but seriously, like, how could you not have fired Nico Harrison? You could not continue to have that black cloud just sitting on top of the Mavericks logo in the middle of the American Airlines Center court as Cooper Flagg's rookie year was unfolding. They had to fire
He was
Nico
towards
Harrison.
the side. He was in the tunnel. He was standing in the tunnel. He's not in the...
But the cloud was right out mid-court. You could not continue to have fired Nico chants in every home game. I mean, come on. Yeah. It was a completely untenable situation. Nico needed to be fired. Hey, Dirk said it. He should have been fired over the summer, whatever. So, but again, I think the desire to see that, okay, you can make a case for it, but I just think that the thing this franchise has to just keep going back to, and has to be the number one priority, is what's best to build around Cooper Flagg. And look, man, a glimpse, let's say you get a glimpse of Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving, and Cooper Flagg on the court this season. Let's say that you get the last, 8 games, 10 games, something like that. Are you really making long-term decisions based on a little sample in late March and April of the regular season? And look, you might get that glimpse on it might have to be on the practice court. The Kyrie thing is very much TBD. There's a lot of factors there. First, he's got to get on the practice court. And in actual practice, he's been on the court, but participating in practice, participating in 5-on-5 action, scrimmage action, checking all the physical boxes, as Jason could talk about, the mental boxes. And, Jay Kidd says standings won't be a factor. How could they not be?
Should I do the drop again?
Come on,
you guys the truth.
Yeah, how could they not be? But with AD, and this gets back to the Rich Paul thing. Rich Paul has been in this business for a long time. He knows how the NBA works. He recognizes what a talent 19-year-old Cooper Flagg is. And so he's looking at this and he's saying, if they're not willing to commit to Anthony Davis now, why would the Mavericks commit to an extension for Anthony Davis that takes him in 36, 37 years old when Cooper's still not even going to be in his prime years? It doesn't, I don't know, man. I have a hard time making that make sense.
Yeah. Do you have something, Nick?
I want your opinion on this, because there was a point in the season where people were talking a lot about a rookie wall for Cooper Flagg. He's either leaped over that, or it was just a 3-game stretch where he didn't shoot the ball well. Jason Kidd said this about the rookie wall, and I don't know that I've gotten your opinion on this.
He's got to touch it. He's got to rub it and hold it.
Do you think he touched it? Do you think he rubbed it? Do you think he held it?
I really don't want to get into discussions of such intimate matters in a public forum. It's a little bit uncomfortable. I would say I'm not too concerned about the rookie wall with Cooper Flagg, as we are about a dozen hours removed from watching the guy score 49 points on 29 shots, grab 10 rebounds. Honestly, some of the reaction on Flagg this year has been pretty funny. Early on when it's he might go 6th in this draft, brother. And I've talked to people in the league about this. You can line up the last decade worth of drafts. Cooper Flagg ain't going 6th in a decade combined draft, much less in one. And this next draft's supposed to be a great draft. He's not going 6th in the last decade of drafts, much less this year. And then look, the rookie wall is a thing, but it wasn't made out of brick, clearly. I think a big part of the rest of the season is just kind of the Mavs. They've got a couple priorities here, right? If we're being real, get Cooper Flagg Rookie of the Year, get a guy in the draft that you can pair with Cooper Flagg long term, and do things that benefit Cooper's long-term development, right? And part of that is just kind of having him go through, obviously he's sat a little bit lately, but having him go through a season and kind of getting a feel for exactly what say 75 games feels like on your body. And then ideally for him at some point in the near future, it'll be that marathon and then the sprint really starts come playoff time. So, again, the rookie wall made for a great soundbite. I'm not sure it was ever a real massive concern for anybody.
So you're saying he did touch it?
I think he maneuvered his way through around.
He may have hurdled it without touching it. I mean,
he can jump.
When it comes to the league, you do a lot of league talk on the Hoop Collective. You focus on Texas, obviously, and Howdy Partners. Outside of Giannis, what is the thing people are talking about the most right now for these next 6 days?
Is there a team for Ja? And we'll see. I don't know who it is, and I've talked to a lot of people. It's hard to see one. And then in terms of max salary guys, the other guy that a lot of people are wondering what happens is with Karl Anthony Towns in New York. And maybe that's as part of a Giannis deal. Maybe that's something separate. Maybe he's not moved. But he's obviously heard his name a lot in the trade rumor mill. His relationship with Mike Brown has been awkward, to put it politely. So that's the other, all-star type of guy, max type of player that people around the league are really looking at, wondering what's going to happen.
Not Caleb Martin.
He's had a good month.
He has. The moment with about 5 minutes left on the 2-on-1 last night was
tough. That was not
incredible.
Not if he puts it down though, it's like one of the most like you talk about cojones a lot. Like that would have been a cojones dunk right there.
He missed a dunk by 3 feet. And there was a guy who had, at the time, 42 points with 5 minutes left, having a pretty historic night, who was filling the lane. And I don't know, if you get that 6'9", springy teenage kid the ball in that situation, he might be able to finish. I mean, he did have only 28 points in the paint last night. He's a decent finisher.
This is my last question. Speaking of the Hoop Collective, how do we get Tim Bontemps to stop interrupting?
You don't. It's just like, how do you get you guys to stop waving pom-poms? I mean, certain things are going to happen regardless.
I've never wanted to come through a podcast like through the speakers more than Bontemps. Him and Wendy, and then you are like kind of just there, just in the distance, and him and Wendy going back and forth arguing. I'm like, dang, dude.
I've got a plan in place. I can't reveal it because it would ruin the plan, but I have been scheming and plotting, and I don't think I'm going to be able to unveil it on the next podcast, but coming soon, you will see my plan.
Okay.
That's
a tease.
That's a tease right there. Professional Tim MacMahon. Did you ever think blogging back in the early days that you would be plotting and scheming against your podcast partner and announce it?
Dude, I didn't know what a podcast was. Even when I first started doing it, I'm like, what's a podcast? Hey, like everybody, like the band MacMahon thing comes from when Cuban banned Stein by
right.
Poor Stein got hit by the shrapnel, but banned Stein and me from the arena. But you do know there was a blog ban back in the day.
Right.
Wow, no. Banned by Cuban. So that one was technically just the locker room, but this was
well, they do that now again.
Yeah, right. Well, it's the part of the reason they credential like everybody and their grandma is because the league said you can't, keep the Dallas Morning News blogger out of the locker room. He has a credential. And Cuban's like, his whole thing was like, there's no difference between the Dallas Morning News blog and a 12-year-old with a blogspot.com account sitting in his parents' basement. So if we're going to credential one, we're going to credential them all. There was one exception. The guy from a blog called fireavery.com applied for a credential. And they decided, well, maybe not all, but the vast majority. No,
we both benefited from that rule, honestly, when we first started.
Yes. This happened. Remember when they traded for J Kidd? And then right after they traded for J Kidd, it was like the first crunch time situation. It was like a second or third game back. They're in San Antonio, and Avery benched J Kidd with like 30-something seconds remaining, and put Stack on the court and said it was because he wanted more spacing. when J Kidd was a better three-point shooter than Stack at the time. And I responded with quite a flood of blog posts over the next 40 or 24 hours. They had a back-to-back. I walked in the locker room. This is when Cuban had the Stairmaster quasi pressers, and he told me I wasn't allowed in there anymore. It was a whole ordeal. So yeah, I've technically been banned twice. Once from the whole arena, once just from the locker room. The great blog ban is forgotten about though, but it was a good time.
It reminds me of Kidd the other day when he said he wasn't playing D-Lo because he was wanting to go younger. And he's like, "Hey, Dwight, you're starting."
DMPC D-Lo.
Hey. Well, thank you, sideline reporter Tim MacMahon, joining us today. It's been a while since we had a sideline reporter.
Hey, Lisa Salters will do this with you if you ask her.
All right. All right. I don't have anything else. Yeah, Tim, appreciate you. Thank you for always, being friends to us. And as cool as you are, you're still talking to little guys like us.
Of all the things that are aggregated from this, I hope that us being friends is not one of them. I appreciate you, fellas. Adios, amigos.
Thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs. We've got more coming for you. We'll have post-game show after the Rockets game this weekend. We'll also have more bonus episodes talking about the trade rumors. We'll be following it all through the trade deadline. Check out the Everydayers Club. It's a different way to subscribe to the show. You get access to ad-free episodes of this show, as well as access to our Discord, which is super fun. We have a lot of fun talking in that. Isaac and I are jumping in all the time. So subscribe to the Everydayers Club, LockedOnMavericks.supercast.com, as well as there's links in the description and the QR code. Thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.